Protestants removed 7 books from the Bible known as the Deuterocanon. They claimed that these books were not inspired by God and didn't belong in the Bible in the first place.
Because the Deuterocanon were all written in the intertestamental period, which lasted about 400 years. During these 400 years of silence, God didn't use any prophets anymore. So we can't be sure that these apocryphal books written at the time are divinely inspired if there are no prophets to receive divine inspiration.
In Romans 3:2, we are told that the Jewish people were entrusted with the oracles of God.
That is precisely why the Old Testament of our Protestant Bible is aligned with the Hebrew Bible, because Paul is talking about all the Jews in general, not just one set of Jews or the Alexandrian Jews, as Catholics claim.
However, the Tanakh was established in 90 AD.
Despite being officially canonized in 90 AD, we can see evidence for the Protestant canon far before then. In Luke 24, Jesus only affirms the Torah, Nevi'im, and Psalms as scripture and prophecy. However, Jesus did not include the Deuterocanon, which tells us that Jesus and the Jews back then didn't see this as scripture.
Many scholars think that they actually excluded the Deuterocanon because they included so much evidence for the deity of Christ.
Before Jesus, only the Torah and the Nevi'im were widely accepted as scripture by the Jews. Those books are contained in our Protestant Bible. However, those Jews did not widely accept the Deuterocanon. Instead, the Deuterocanon is actually rejected as scripture by the majority of Jews.
In 250 BC, 70 Jewish scholars and rabbis got together and created the Septuagint, which just so happens to include the Deuterocanonical books.
First of all, it was only 72 Jewish scholars. Secondly, the only historical account that we have of the Septuagint is the letter of Aristeas. The problem with the letter of Aristeas is that it's not credible for 3 main reasons. Reason number 1 is that the letter of Aristeas is pseudo-apocryphal. Reason number 2 is that the letter of Aristeas contains things that are probably made up. An example of this in the letter of Aristeas is how each of the 72 Jewish scholars individually translated the entire Torah into Greek in 72 days. And somehow after the 72 days, they all got the same exact translation. That story just doesn't seem logically or statistically true. The third reason is that there is no Egyptian or Alexandrian historical account of this happening. And even if the letter of Aristeas is true, it only says that the Torah was transcribed into Greek, not the entire Septuagint as we know today, and that excludes the Deuterocanon.
The Deuterocanon includes prophecies about Jesus Christ that could only come from divine revelation.
In Luke 24, Jesus says that he's fulfilling the prophecies in the Torah, Nevi'im, and Psalms, books that are in our Protestant canon, but he doesn't at all mention the Deuterocanon.
Wisdom of Solomon 2:12 through 20.
Wisdom 2 exactly parallels to Isaiah 53, and also the Wisdom of Solomon is pseudo-apocryphal.
Baruch 3:36.
And Baruch 3 exactly parallels to Isaiah 7 and Isaiah 9. And in case of Baruch 3:38, Catholics actually agree that Baruch 3 is talking about the personified wisdom of God.
So if these books aren't inspired by God, where are they getting the information about all of these messianic prophecies from?
These authors could get this information from previous prophets, such as Isaiah. These parallels don't prove divine inspiration, and despite this, true prophecy alone does not define something as canonical scripture. Nathan was a prophet, why don't we have his writings? Enoch was a prophet and directly mentioned in Jude, why don't Catholics also accept the book of Enoch? Philip's 4 daughters prophesied, but why don't we have their writings or their teachings as well?
They were actually included in the first Bible canon at the councils of Carthage, Hippo, and Rome.
It's also possible that the church included these writings because it's the only place you can find biblical support for Roman Catholic traditions.
They're also included in the Codex Sinaiticus, the Codex Vaticanus.
The codices were directly copied from the Greek Septuagint that existed in the 4th century. The 4th century version of the Septuagint did include the Deuterocanon, so of course the codices are going to have the Deuterocanon.
And the Latin Vulgate.
Jerome, who translated the Latin Vulgate from Hebrew to Latin, only included the Deuterocanon because Pope Damascus asked him to, and he did so reluctantly. And in the preface of the Latin Vulgate, Jerome actually writes that the Deuterocanon should be considered ecclesiastical, not canonical scripture. Jerome's reason for this is because the Deuterocanon was not part of Hebrew canon. Those are the same reasons we Protestants reject the Apocrypha.
Protestants removed these books from the Bible, and that is a serious problem.
One could argue that us Protestants rejected the Apocrypha before it was even officially affirmed as scripture at the Council of Trent in the 16th century.
Deuteronomy 4:2 warns against anyone removing things from the scriptures.
It's funny because the first thing Deuteronomy 4:2 says, it's not add to scripture.